Swati is a community architect, activist, and artist whose work engages with issues of social justice, right to shelter, and evictions in Indian cities. Her social practice combines architectural activism, community engagement, and practice based research on the urban themes of migration and urban informality. She was recently nominated as one of the 13 India France Young Leaders 2018 by the Franco Indian Trust for her efforts in inclusive development and participatory architecture. Swati.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just to understand the audience a bit, I've just arrived today. Sorry, I missed yesterday. Can I understand how many students are here in the audience by a show of hands? And architecture student? Okay. And how many architects? Okay. Artists or identify as artists? Okay. And the rest of you, do you want to just shout out what you like to do, what you do, just so that I have an idea? Journalists? Okay. Any other profession which is represented here in the crowd? Okay, well, thank you. So I think before I begin, I would just like to share something which I think might be relevant with what Krishna just presented and the team earlier. So I'm also working as part of the Smart Cities mission as a consultant, and this is in Amravati. You might have heard it's the new planned capital of Andhra Pradesh. And you might have also heard that it's a greenfield capital. It's a new planned development which is coming up on fertile agricultural land. And so the farmers have given their land through the land pooling process. It's one of the biggest sort of exercises of its kind which has taken place in the country. And now within the city there are 29 villages. So they have given their land to the city, and only the residential part, sort of like the urban villages in Delhi, which have a Lal Dora area. So it's a development like that. So there's a planned city, and within that are 29 villages, and which is where we are working in upgrading the sort of basic infrastructure, which is schools and anganwadis and health centers. I'm just arriving from there actually right now, and yesterday we were in a school. So there are two schools in this village, and they're quite small, and they need a playground. And we were discussing what could be alternate sort of locations where a new school could be built. And they said we have a lot of land available. We were quite surprised because all of the land has been given to the city. And so we asked them, what is this land? And when we went and saw, it was a pond. And so we were quite surprised, and we were like, how can you build a school within a pond? And then the villagers told us that the city has planned a road, and we could see half the construction was already there, a road through the pond, which is, I think, similar to what Krishna was saying at the beginning of his presentation. And I was quite horrified to see that the water network of the existing water bodies basically is being replaced by the iron grid structure of the new planned development. Some of the water bodies are being retained, but a lot of new sort of water bodies are being created. And to me, it's just one of the examples of how most of the projects under Smart Cities missions are being implemented, which is with a disregard to what is already existing on ground. It's always easier to build something new from scratch, and I'm not saying all of them. I'm hoping not the project I'm working on, but most of them. And that's the narrative, the way it is being interpreted as well. And just to make it clear, I think every city has a lot of smart city projects. So in Amravati, there are about 100 projects. What we're working on is just one of them. Visakhapatnam, where we are working, there are 50 projects. And what's the reason behind this sort of approach to the latest model of urban development we have? It's three very simple things, actually, because, the politicians who are sort of behind pushing any project are only there for 5 years. The bureaucrats might be transferred, anytime, especially if you're doing good work, you get easily transferred. So you want to go for a project which is visible, which is quick to implement, and which is also encashable, meaning to say it's easy to take a loan for the project, it's easy to get funding for the project. And that is why I think the sort of urban aesthetic that is developing in all the cities, which goes back to the question that you had asked, why do all the cities, it seems like they're all beginning to look like each other. The reason for that, I think, really comes from there. It is these processes which are forming the design criteria, and not the other sort of processes that typically we would like to think. And I think who is culpable for this? I mean, I think it's very easy to always criticize the system from outside. Actually, we are responsible. I take responsibility for my community, which is the architectural community, the planning community, and the sort of really these loud, large sort of images, these very seductive sort of images that you see when you think of smart cities are produced by architects. And perhaps what we need is a shift from these mega projects to more silent projects, which are actually working with people, involving participatory processes, which are not just words on paper, but actual participation. Many of the smart cities projects have an app for feedback, and the only people who are using the app are actually just the people within the municipality, so like 100 people, and that's counted as public participation. And a move towards these longer term and deeper projects, and I feel for that one also needs to work within the system, I think, like many of the people are doing. So with that short note, I will move to the presentation. And before I start this, just a quick note on urban informality. Krishna also covered that. Most of our cities are built this way. They are being built by the people themselves. So 70% of Delhi is considered informal. In Kolkata as well, it would be a similar sort of a number. Mumbai, Jaipur, Bangalore, all the sort of bigger metropolitan cities are being constructed by the people themselves. So these consist of squatter settlements, which are commonly called slums, urban villages, of course, unauthorized colonies, and they're being constructed by people because there isn't enough affordable housing. So if you don't have a place to stay, you create your own affordable housing. And so that's the sort of context that we have been working in. And I have two examples of participatory processes that we have been learning from to see if it is possible to have a more bottom-up approach to architecture, to planning. And the settlements that we work in are considered illegal because of a lack of land tenure. So the first story is from the banks of Yamuna, the river in Delhi, or the so-called drain. Farmers have been farming there since, well, for decades now. After independence, they formed cooperatives. The land was leased out to them by the government, and the lease has expired. What is happening now is farming is still continuing along the banks of the river, but they're facing constant evictions. So every year, the evictions of their villages, when bulldozers completely raze their villages to the ground, their crops are razed to the ground as well. And the reasons for this are many. They're quite complex. Land ownership is one issue. Also, it's said that the vegetables which are grown along the river are polluted. Which is, well, partly true. It's very contentious. It really depends on where you take the sample from. Different institutions have done different tests, like Pusa Institute, and because most of them are using groundwater versus only some which are actually who are actually using the water from the river. And then, of course, there are other allegations, such as farmers are actually polluting the river. I find it quite strange that of all the reasons for pollution of the river, farmers have to bear the brunt of that pollution. So what has increasingly been happening is that the houses are being demolished, and they've been living here in a very sustainable sort of a way for decades. When you look at other cities, you look at other countries in Europe, for instance, everyone's talking about urban farming. We already have urban farming in the middle of the city, and somehow we are bent on removing it. And I wouldn't be surprised if after 20 years, some European architect is called in to actually create urban farms within the city. So this is an area that we worked in. This is along the river. These are the floodplains on the eastern side. And other sort of encroachments are allowed, such as the metro construction, the bus depot that has come up, Akshardham has come up, but it's the villages which are being removed for some reason. So in one of these demolitions, what had happened is it was in 2011, not just the houses were demolished, but also school was demolished. The school was being run for 250 students, and it was completely razed to the ground. So we have something called right to education, but at the same time, schools are being demolished. So some people went to the High Court to file a PIL, a public interest litigation. They got some lawyers to come on site and see the situation, and they actually won the case, meaning to say they got permission to rebuild the school as long as it was temporary, because it's the floodplains and you can't really build a permanent structure. And so at that point, I got in touch with the people living here, with the community, because someone had approached us, and they asked us if we can build a temporary school which cannot be demolished, which basically means that before a bulldozer comes, can we open the school, can we store it somewhere, can we then build it again once the bulldozers are gone? So this is one picture of the kind of houses that are built there. The materials used are river weed from the river, bamboo, and other sort of found materials. And this is the sort of material palette that we started learning from, and also other design details, the way people are building the houses already. So here on the right is a detail I really like. It's a cycle tire which is holding down the tarpaulin on the roof. And it's, well, you can see what's happening. It's half kind of dug within the ground, and it's a very common detail everywhere. On the left is a sort of a pop-up structure. This is a machhardani. This is for mosquito net. So you just have to tie 4 poles to your bed every night, and here it's kept rolled up. So learning from these sort of details, so to say. And then we started coming up with the design after generating a design brief with the people who run the school. And then this is what we enjoy doing as architects. It's very easy to do, come up with a sort of a design that works. So the idea was it had to be affordable, it had to be quick to make, and also quick to dismantle. But finally, after design was ready, we thought that the NGOs who were supporting the community would be able to raise funds, which did not happen. So after a few months, we decided, and this is, I feel like this has been one of the first projects for me personally where I've really learned how to step beyond the typical thresholds, the typical professional barriers that we create for ourselves, and to be actually working, with the people you're designing for. And there were lots of learnings in this, and of course, if I had to do it now, I would do it a bit differently. So at that point, we started raising funds on our own. The budget was only 2.5 lakhs, so that's not a large amount. So we did a friend funding campaign on Facebook, and it was easy to raise the amount. And finally, we started building the school. So this was in 2017, the summer of 2017, so the toughest sort of month to be building something yourself. And finally, this is the kind of school that we built. So I just wanted to show you the process a bit. We take lots of team pictures. That's one of our favorite activities. The process was lots of volunteers joined us, the parents from the community, the teachers, and the students. So the school was built by the entire group themselves. The parents also, they're very busy. They're farmers, and they can't really afford to take out time from their day-to-day occupations. So we didn't have a lot of parents. A lot of school teachers were involved, and a lot of volunteers from outside, which gives me a lot of hope for the future of architecture. There were lots of students and lots of young graduates who joined us. There was someone who was good at carpentry. She taught us how to do carpentry. We got a few power tools, such as drills and the saw. This settlement is completely off-grid. So we also had to get a DG set because there's no electricity. All the facilities like water, food for the volunteers, these small things I think become sort of big challenges when you're doing something like this. And then this is a team building the school. Happy to say that it was led mostly by women, and that's why it was so well done. That's Naresh on the left. He was the main community mobilizer from within the settlement. So the design uses metal framework. We first wanted to use bamboo, but then someone was willing to donate metal. Also, it's more durable. So all the metal components are bolted together, so it's easy to bolt them and unbolt them. And for this, of course, we got a welding team. We learned welding later, but there's no way we could have done this safely on our own. And the rest of it, which is the carpentry work, which is building the walls, the doors, the windows, and the bamboo infill, is something that the team did on its own. So this is the school coming up. And then, of course, the bamboo weaves, which are very simple. So the students were able to make their own walls, own windows, sorry. So you can see the doors here. Kavya, a young graduate, she's lifting it, so they were quite light. We decided to use a lot of doors and a lot of windows to have a very open, airy sort of a feel. We didn't want to create another box to enclose the students. And also the idea was to have pivoted doors because they don't need a frame. They are easy to install. The load transfers vertically down for the architects who are interested in knowing. So it's just easier structurally. And then finally, this is a graphic just depicting all the sort of processes that went in building this. So we built this in 3 weeks because there were lots of festivals in the middle. It was raining. It started raining. This was the end of June. And finally, this is what the school looked like after the classes started. And this is what it looked like after a year, at which point we had to dismantle the school. This is the last day of classes, and I'll tell you why we had to dismantle. So there were land ownership issues. In this case, it wasn't the government, it wasn't the DDA who came and asked us to remove the school. When I say us, sorry, I'm taking a lot of ownership. Actually, the school belongs to the administration. We only helped build it. So the admin was asked to remove the school by the owner of the property who had donated it earlier. So ownership is a bit complex. The land owner, the so-called land owner, actually did not own the land. DDA owns it, but he would charge rent on that piece of land. So after a year, he wanted it back. And we tried finding a piece of land elsewhere. It was very difficult because now there is a flyover which is being constructed in that exact area across the river. So there's a lot of vigilance. DDA guards are always there. So even a temporary structure we could not create, we could not set up. So this was a very sad experience for the students, for the team who built it, for the admin. And we had to dismantle the school. So we numbered all the different components and dismantled it in a few hours over 2 days. And finally, after a few months of it being stored, managed to find a way to recreate it, but elsewhere. So another NGO adopted it called Child Trust. And now it's been rebuilt in further south of the river. It's the Hindon River. But there is no school for the kids who were using it earlier. And so this was a Brit school, which is a very important sort of a link for really young students who can't travel far to a more formal school. So now they've been kind of scattered, going to different schools, if at all. And the school itself has traveled further south, like I said. So you see the 2 rectangles here in the middle of the city. And then they've been kind of rearranged according to the orientation and the space available outside the city. And literally, the city had no space for the school, and we had to recreate it outside. So the school is going to open in a week. I think a week or maximum 2. There's an inauguration which is planned. And in this case, the school administration who adopted this school don't really know the community. They're not based within the community. They've come from outside. So they're kind of building relations right now. Classes will start in 1 to 2 weeks. So in this case, we didn't really have volunteers who could build the school, and craftsmen were hired to build the school. There were lots of beds, lots of cots, lots of carts being made. So we thought, why not use the same local skill to make the doors this time instead of using only bamboo. And so this is how the doors were made this time, with the difference, using the materials found there. This is the keel building the school. And then this is how it looks right now. It's a very new school. But I think the discussion I want to shift this towards is in the direction of whose city is it and who has the right to the city, so to say. This is the Zone O plan of the master plan, which has stipulated that there should be biodiversity parks along Yamuna. And maybe Krishna can tell us, but are parks more sustainable than farms? Why can't we have farming and parks? Why can't we have farms along the river? It needs a reimagination of a master plan. This is something that we will work towards. I don't know if we will be successful. It's a very small voice that we have. And then most likely by the end of the year, the farmers are to be evicted. That's the notice they've got. And they may or may not be resettled. So they may be resettled outside the city to Bhavana, Narela, these far-flung colonies, or they might not even get resettlement. And that's the sort of scenario that they're facing right now. moving on to my second story. This is another settlement under a metro line. But I think another, or a better way of putting it is really a metro line was built over the settlement. So there are about 200 houses there. And before the metro line was built, they were already living on this piece of land. And then the metro construction started in around 2008. And I think by 10, it was finished. And finally, the people who were living there came back. So this is where they were living before. This is where the livelihoods were, the sources were. And then obviously they would come back. And it's a very transient settlement. It's made of very, very temporary materials like bamboo, tarpaulin. So this is what it looks like. It's made up of two communities. One is a traditional performing arts tribe. There are 7 tribes of traditional performers, street performers in our country, like jugglers, magicians, acrobats, and this is one of them. But today, their occupations have been banned. I don't know how many of us know about it, but there was a Dramatic Performances Act which bans performances in public spaces, which is now repealed in Delhi, but in effect, it's used to stop people from having any performances, especially when you're from a lower, so-called lower socio-economic background, because of questions of caste and class. A lot of discrimination is seen. It's left to the discretion of the police, and it's practically not possible to practice any of these arts within the city anymore. So if at all, you might find some madaris, some magicians on the fringes of the city, but no longer within the city. So today they have shifted to other sort of professions like doing odd jobs, such as washing utensils at weddings, sometimes begging. And then there's another community who are known as the Kapadias. I don't know, again, if you're familiar with that. Kapadias are, this is again a traditional occupation, very sustainable practice in which you sell utensils in exchange for old clothes. So that's the sort of occupation they've been involved in. And in last year, April, there was a fire. And the entire community, the entire settlement was burned down. You can see the underside of the metro. Now they're facing a case in the court because they're seen as a security threat to the metro. And so they also have a notice for eviction. So at that point, this was a year back, some of them had approached me because, well, there are very few architects who are working on this kind of work, and asked me if it's possible that we could come up together with an alternate design within the same sort of budget, which is not so inflammable. Just within half an hour, I think, like all the houses were gutted. So is there another way of building these shelters? So this is what we started thinking about. And after a few community consultations, a sort of design brief in a very architectural language was developed. And then the team, I got a few of my students from School of Planning and Architecture involved, and the team started looking at how people are already designing, how they're already building, what are the sort of improvisations which are there. So even if the shelter is very temporary, everyone has a very strong, solid door which can be locked. That's very important. And using found materials, different wall panels and doors are made. So there you can see 4 window shutters make 1 door panel. And here is the sort of urban landscape. I'm sorry, I think the pictures are being eaten by the slide, by the projector, but I think it's okay. I only realized it and half the presentation is over. So this is a sort of, urban landscape, if I can call it that. And a lot of improvised techniques of building. So when vernacular techniques come to our cities, what are the sort of improvisations that take place? So here you see it's cow dung, which is typically caked on mud walls. Here it's caked on plywood, which is reused plywood. So something like this, and it requires applying it again and again. And the inside is something like this, in which saris are used for insulation on the ceiling, the cow dung paste inside as well. And then, of course, the Kapadia tribe that I was telling you about, saris are used to drape even the outside. A temple is a community space which was built, an interior space here. And then the next step was also looking at how people come together, what are the community spaces that have been created. This is, I don't know if it's clear, but it's a cooking space shared by a few houses. It has blankets. This was in winter that we had taken this picture, blankets which can be draped down. And then looking at what are the different materials around there which can be used. So we started exploring metal, which is reused metal, because there's a Loha Mandi which is right there, and perhaps that could be useful in building a more durable structure. It might cost a bit more than building in bamboo, but it will last longer and also gives you an additional height. So you can have 1.5 floors like a loft. So these are the kind of things that we started looking at. These are my students building models, which is the most effective mode of communication we have realized. Instead of using paper, which can feel very alien to people who are used to the spoken word and not the written word. And then finally, so the sort of, I'm not going to go into the design details. Finally, what was decided is that if everyone starts building a different way overnight, then of course they will be evicted. So why not build everything one by one? And so we decided to build a prototype, one sort of a model, which could then act as a template for other houses if they wanted to build that way, if it worked for them. And so everyone decided that it should be an Anganwadi. First, we thought maybe it could be a Mohalla clinic, but there's already a private clinic, so everyone felt the need for an Anganwadi for young kids till the age of 6, and so we decided to build that. And to finish our design discussions, we also decided to build a real-life mock-up, 1:1 prototype in bamboo. So we built this in 2 hours. This was in April, so it wasn't very hot. And then by the time I went home, this was just within an hour, the entire mock-up was demolished by the police because no new structures are allowed, and this is a sort of urban precarity that they find themselves in. So this was, again, very disappointing. I think this one more for me than the people there who were sort of comforting me because they were like, "Theek hai, we'll build again." And I really liked to see this also. One of the social workers sent me this picture on the same day saying that, this kid is explaining to someone else who had come later, okay, this is the kind of structure that we had built. So the intention of the exercise was actually met, that we managed to have a discussion on how the spaces should work, and the memory sort of lives, I think, through these sketches. So finally, this is the process that we use to start building. And I feel in this sort of second project that we worked on, the idea was also to keep the design more open-ended. So I'm sharing that as an example here. When compared to the school project, where it was only the building, which was a process of co-creation. And so then we managed, the community leader, he managed to collect 50 people, and we started building the structure. We built this within 1 day using something called slotted angles. In offices, you have these storages, the old sort of file cabinet systems, where it's easy to, you can see it here, where it's easy to just kind of bolt these members together, so you don't need drills to be making this. And finally, this is what the shelter looked like after a day. And then over the next few days, the walls started being put in, so reused plies, using the same materials that the community is already building. And then also introducing some alternate materials, such as fiberglass, which actually we realized later is highly inflammable. But this is a sort of learning. And then new sort of design started emerging. The ladder was built for the loft using any leftover pieces that we could find, a small door for the kids, a big door for adults. And this is what it looked like before it was painted. And then finally, the women of the community took over. So till this point, it was the fathers who were building the shelter and also kind of kid-proofing it, making it really safe for kids because it had sharp edges. And these are the sort of things, as a designer, perhaps you forget. But in this case, they made sure that everything was baby-proofed. And then the mothers came in, and they decided which colors they wanted and painted it these bright, happy colors. And then the kids came in and painted their favorite sort of drawings on it. And this is what it looks like today. Every house donated a sari, so that's the false ceiling for insulation. And finally, this is a graphic to show how the sort of materials, the sort of practices which are already existing in the settlement were used to build this Anganwadi. And today, the Anganwadi service from the the ICDS Integrated Child Development Service has started. So there are 2 Anganwadis now which we have got permission for, and food, the midday meals are being served every day. And what I have learned in this process is what can be the overlaps between formal and informal practices, meaning to say, well, it's considered an informal settlement, it's considered illegal, but now we're also able to get a formal sort of service from the Child and Women Welfare Department, and that sort of gives you perhaps a template for what could be different ways of co-producing these spaces within the city. Yeah, and I think with that note, I will conclude my presentation. I just want to say, especially for young architects and students, that sometimes it's a good idea to start just creating projects on your own instead of waiting for the government to be implementing these things, while at the same time, if you're able to work with the government, sort of work within the system, so to say, I think that's also an alternate approach which is required. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Swati. Nice presentation. Any questions? Yeah.
It is a nice presentation. I introduce myself as a scientist from Central Building Research Institute, Roorkee. And this type of configuration of these structures and setups, it takes a lot of time and cost. At least as a scientist, I can propose that these structural tubular systems with prefabrications, etc., it takes only, and it's only my personal idea, it takes about half an hour to the construction of the main structures and 1 hour for cladding, etc. That is a very high quick constructions for quick rehabilitation of the persons. And another system is that is 1 day construction period. That is for mass housing or for rehabilitation purpose. That is almost semi-permanent. And this is a temporary construction for this type of purposes. And I propose some of the things for DRDO and Nalanda, that also from CBRI, that quick rehabilitation schemes. And this particular idea is not presented there, but it is a personal idea that it can be constructed very quickly with tubular prefabricated sections, and only construction period is half an hour and cladding period is only 1 hour. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Tubular structures, yeah, I think that's a good idea as well. Here, it was whatever was available outside the community, in the vicinity, is what was used. But depending from place to place, you can have different materials which can be used, and there are different approaches. But also here, I mean, this is a new technology of building as well. Like till now, if you're building in bamboo, and also, you know, we come in from outside and we say, this is a better technology. It may or may not work. It may or may not be a good design. I think that is something we'll realize only with time as more and more people start building this way, if at all. But yeah, you're absolutely right. In terms of technical details, designs, there are lots of approaches. Finally, what works depends on the context, what is available, and yeah, so many other sort of, sorry? Yeah, I understood. Tubes you're talking about, right? Yeah, you can also. Yeah, so just affordability and availability is one factor, but otherwise I think, yeah, it could be one possible solution, definitely.
The thing is that whenever we are planning the smart city, it must be an inclusive city, because we cannot remove villages. You know, in Delhi there are 390 villages. So we cannot remove those villages. And there are slums, there are informal settlements. So we have to see the city into a very holistic perspective. As you rightly told that now you are developing this Amravati, there are 25 villages.
Yeah.
Now you have to think how to make those villages smart. You have to sit with all the stakeholders, the panchayat, the NGO, those who are working, the government, and all sorts of private, if the private companies, the corporate sectors are investing.
Yeah.
So the architecture people cannot work in silos. They have to take all the stakeholders so that your architecture things will become more valuable and relevant. That is what is. And you have to work with the slums and make them affordable housing. That's why you have to see the development, you have to include planning with the development.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless and until you include planning, we integrate the planning with development, because I have developed one of the program, PG Diploma in Urban Planning and Development, and near about 50% of our students are from architecture side. And whenever they ask us, sir, how this program will be useful to me, so I told that, you see, have you read urban poverty? Have you read urban unemployment? Have you read urban management, urban governance? All these things are very important, because architecture cannot be taken in silos. They have to take the entire holistic perspective. That's why what I am saying, you have to see how effectively you can use the open spaces. Take the Chandigarh, for example, city beautiful Chandigarh. Every sector has a school, every sector has a park, every sector has a hospital. There are quarters, there are everything, it is well planned. And there is only single water body, Sukhna Lake. How beautifully they are utilizing it. And in case of Bangalore, you see there are so many water bodies. And it has, and many of them, 54% of them have closed. And they are not able to effectively utilize the water body. Water bodies is not meant for supply of the water. They are for entertainment. They have to be, you have to see the economy of the water in the city. So city cannot be think in a very micro or narrow perspective. You have to see, if you have to make the city smart, you have to stick in a holistic perspective. That's my.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I completely
I will-
agree. I just want to quickly respond. Development is synonymous with displacement in our cities. That's what's happening all the time. The metro line, which was built over this community, they're not even using it. They can't afford it. Like, the rates have been doubled now. So even when it comes to smart cities, I mean, smart is just one, it's a brand. You could call it livable cities, you could call it quick cities, you could call it sustainability was a buzzword before that. I don't think that matters. What matters is how it is being interpreted, and smart is, I mean, if it's interpreted as using technology, that's fine, but the way it is being interpreted is a very technocratic approach. It is an over-reliance on technology. As an example, sorry, just to quickly finish, as an example, we're also working in Visakhapatnam, and we're talking about, the municipality is talking about smart schools, right, which basically translates to digital learning within schools. But what is also happening is there are smart boards now, but when there's no electricity, what do? You can't use the board. They've removed the chalkboards. So what the teachers have come up with, I think that is really, really smart, is now they have triple board. So they have the blackboard over which the digital board has been pasted, so they can't use it. So now they have a green board which they've hung from the top. So, you know, they just take it out when they're using digital board, and otherwise when they can't use it because there's some problem with the technology or there's no electricity, then they kind of hang this sort of more traditional board. So I think this digital jump is a good idea if we kind of are able to also negotiate a way around that. Sometimes digital, I mean, smart is just translating to use technology sometimes becomes a barrier instead of actually becoming an enabler, and I think that's something we need to be careful about.
Thanks, Swati, for this
Okay,
wonderful
thank you.
presentation.